Fred Yeakel, and we're here today at the 2015 Monterey Sports Car Reunion with the Thomas Cheetah that was raced out of Alan Green Chevrolet. And with us is Larry Webb, and he was the mechanic on the car the whole time that Alan Green had it, and he worked with all the different drivers. And he's going to give us some of his thoughts and remembrances of the car.
Well, Fred, first of all, it's really good to see the car here. I remember the day that it actually got delivered to Seattle, and of course when we got it the first time, it had the 58mm Webbers on it. I see now it has the dual air meter that we ran back in the day, and that was quite a thing because we actually were able to get more horsepower with the dual air meter than we were with the 4 Webbers. And the throttle response and overall drivability of the car was much better with the fuel injection as opposed to the Webbers. So it's really good to see that unit is still on it. And I see that it looks just like it did when we had it. I had the green paint on it. It looks great.
And there's no doubt in your mind that this is the car.
It is the car.
Because there are some people that said it isn't, but I've talked to you and I've talked to all the people that bought it from, and so we're sure it is.
And I followed the car from the time that that it was sold through all of the owners. And if you'll remember, you came to Kent, and and we had
we busted the transmission.
Yeah,
and you told me how I didn't have to pull the motor to get the tranny out.
Right.
And I'm grateful to this day.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
But so I know that this is the car, and it's unfortunate that it isn't. It is the real car, and as you know, we had several drivers during that period of time. Jerry Grant drove the car, Gary Gove, and also, and then Alan Grant drove it for me. And we traveled all over the country with this car. We went to Canada. Of course, we went to Westwood. And we went to Toronto.
Now, when you went to Canada, it didn't say Alan Green on it. It said Citation Motors.
It did. We ran up Citation Motors. Was a specialty car dealer in Toronto, and very kindly offered to sponsor us if we bring the car back there. And so that was a plus. Alan talked to the owner there, and they made a deal, and so they paid all our expenses, put us up in Mosport, and we're very pleased with running back there and running the car at that time. So.
Now, the first fellow that drove it,
his name was Don Jensen.
Don Jensen, right.
And Don filled in for us down at Riverside. The funny part about it was, of course, we didn't know it was one of these hot days, and Don came in and he was absolutely wiped out because of the heat in the car. So if you'll look on the roof, as you know, there are a couple of vents there. Well, those vents were added. We added those vents to the car simply to let the hot air out and try to get some fresh air in it. So that's
even then it's hotter than hell.
Even there, yeah, right, for sure. We know that. So.
And you drove it yourself 2 or 3 times.
I drove it myself. I drove it in 1965. Had a lot of fun with it. It stayed in my garage, so I figured I might as well drive it. So I'm really familiar with the car. And one thing we want to point out, the car never really had a VIN. There were no stampings on the frame of this car or anything else that would identify it as number 1, number 2, number 3, whatever. Bill wasn't into that type of thing, and certainly we didn't put any VIN numbers on it, and it was just the Cheetah.
Well, now the first one that Alan Green had, they took back to Daytona, and it got destroyed.
It got destroyed. Unfortunately, Jerry had issues with it on the high bank, and so he drove it down into the lake, and that was the end of it. So.
And then you went and picked this one up. It was red originally. It had red, big block letters on it.
Big block letters on it, and yeah. And then there was the time when Alan said, I think we need to paint all our race cars green. And so that's when this car got the green color on it, and it just looked like it just today.
Good.
We painted our Camaro. We painted the Chevy 2 that we were drag racing at the time, and painted the Cheetah. And
now you took this to the drags one time, right?
I did, and at that time they had a drag strip down the Puyallup portion of it. Okay. And so one night we loaded on the trailer and I went down there, and it ran very fast. It ran almost 137 miles an hour, 136.50.
Wow.
10.56. It was a really good
all,
ride.
all in road race trim.
All in road race trim, just exactly. In fact, we took it off. I think we had raced it a week or two before, and we took it down there just exactly like it was. And so, yeah, that was a fun trip for me down that quarter mile. So, but yeah, really.
I would
good to see
imagine it hooked up real good in the quarter mile with all the weight back
it
there.
did. It really it came out. I think I made a couple of passes, and then I thought, well, I'm going to give it all, and I did, and it just ran great. So
That's super. Well, I know the time that I've had it, I've been terrified and enjoyed it all at the same time. Is that about
that's about
the way
it.
you'd call it, Cheetah?
Yeah. As you know, you've driven it, and we know that it has some characteristics that most race car drivers don't really like, but all in all, it's a great car. It's a wonderful car, and certainly was a very special car for that period of time in history. So if Bill would have been able to complete his original idea, the Cobra would be nothing. So we know that it was much faster than the Cobra.
It's lighter and it's got more power.
And
so
it's got more power. You got it.
And actually, although the brakes aren't disc, between you and I, they're better than people think they are. And I always let everybody think they were junk.
Yeah. Duntov, the famous Zora Duntov of Chevrolet, did a study, and they actually found out that drum brakes up to a certain point were actually better than a disc brake. The only thing that, of course, as we know about the drums, is that they don't dissipate the heat fast enough, and they will start to fade. But up to the point of fade, they actually have more stopping ability than a disc brake does. And I know that at least all the Cheetahs that I ever saw, and I think I saw most of them, because I was certainly alive during that period of time, not one Cheetah did I ever see that had disc brakes.
Well, I was involved with the Dixon Cadillac car because, I mean, that car was run by the owner of the dealership and his used car manager, who had no experience at all. And I had been running a solid axle Corvette, and our family dealt with that with Dixon Cadillac, and I helped them. And I know the whole time they had it, they had drum brakes, and I drove it one time. Willow Springs had drum brakes, and a fellow by the name of David Pinju, who lives in Las Vegas, which is where the Dixon car went to, he said that he put disc brakes on the front in 1968. And I have no reason to not believe him.
But